Victims in Texas and Ohio saying hate has no place in our country. For more, let's bring in Karl Rove, former White House Deputy Chief of Staff to President George W. Bush and Fox News contributor. Karl, good morning to you.
Morning.
First, if you could respond to the words from the president just a few moments ago.
Well, I thought they were good. This is a moment where the country needs to be brought together and where we need to have a sense of common purpose, common goal. And it's tough in these times. Everybody in our political system needs to do better. The president needs to do better. His rhetoric at times has been raw and dangerous, I think, in terms of being easily misunderstood. You know, the Charlottesville statement, for example. But he's not the only one who is not rising up to the level that America needs. I looked at the comments of the Democratic candidates for president, and look, I get it. They're running for president. This happens in the middle of the campaign. But the readiness to blame this on the president, it strikes me as way over the top. For example, Cory Booker, there's complicity in the president's hatred that undermines the goodness and decency of Americans. Mayor Buttigieg, at best, President Trump is condoning and encouraging white nationalism. Kamala Harris, we have a president of the United States who has chosen to use his words in a way that have been selling hate and division among us. Bernie Sanders, please stop the racist, anti-immigrant rhetoric. Stop the hatred in this country, which is creating the kind of violence that we see. Look, imagine for a moment, the thought experiment, imagine for a moment after a supporter of Bernie Sanders attempted to kill multiple members of the United States Congress, Republican members of their baseball team who were practicing for a baseball match against the Democrat members of the House. What if somebody had aimed those words at Bernie Sanders and held him to blame for the incident? This is not what our country needs at this moment.
In addition to that, Amy Klobuchar, another presidential candidate, also just tweeted out, and she took on the president's words from just a few moments ago: mental illness and hate pulls triggers, not the gun. She said that is a dodge by the president, and he is avoiding the truth of the matter. Obviously, they are calling on the president to act here in the form of changing gun laws in this country. The president said during that speech, "I'm open to discussing all ideas that will work." He has proposed some things on Twitter. How far do you think the president is willing to go and to work with Congress to enact change?
Well, it sounds like he is, but let's talk about the kind of change that the Democrats want. Bernie Sanders insisted that the Senate come back and immediately pass two bills passed by the House that have to do with background checks. But as you heard earlier in the reporting, background checks there's nothing in either of these instances that would have stopped somebody from buying a gun. Now, we're also talking about an assault weapons ban, but that will still leave large numbers of so-called assault weapons, semi-automatic weapons out there. I mean, talk about dodging. Really, at the end of the day, my suspicion is that a lot of the Democrats running for president would like to follow the example of Australia, which, after having a series of mass murders, basically banned all weapons. And maybe that's where they want to go, but they're not willing to say that right now, because my feeling is this is more about politics than it is about getting, taking advantage of the moment is more what it's about. Let me talk about two other people, and I thought it was a contrast because both are Texans, but they both have a different approach to this. We had Robert Francis O'Rourke, who in this moment where we needed somebody to strike a moment of unity and eloquence, here's what he said. You know this, you know the blank he's been saying, referring to President Trump. He's been calling Mexicans immigrants rapists and criminals. I don't know, like members of the press, what the blank. I mean, connect the dots about what he's doing in this country. He's not tolerating racism. He's promoting racism. If we ever needed any indication that this is somebody who is not worthy of the highest office in the land, there it is. By contrast, Julian Castro, I thought, hit it almost right. He said, he did criticize the president, saying the president ought to try and unite Americans instead of fanning the flames of bigotry. I thought the first part of that was good. He was aspirational. Here's what the president ought to be doing. But he said, I'm not going to hold the president responsible for the shooter. The shooter pulled the trigger. I thought that was a better way to approach this in a moment where the country doesn't need more hyper-partisanship. It needs a moment of unity.
Well, the president did tackle a number of issues, including racist hate, white supremacy, the internet, video games. He addressed all of that in that that speech. 29 people killed, dozens more injured. Karl Rove, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karl. Here is the mayor of Dayton, Nan Whaley, at the microphone. We've been waiting on this. We know the local police is there.